Welcome back to Kin in Line. I make this part 116. And here we have yours truly, self-portrait from the mid to late 80s. And it looks as though the moustache is still there, hanging on by a thread. And then I took the opportunity of doing that little fella, goggle eyes, square-eyed. It makes me think of what's happening to people today as they watch television and are becoming totally indoctrinated. Frightening to see. So this is, as I had moved to Port Elizabeth Central in the mid-80s, I started wandering around and discovering all the magnificent historic buildings there. And this is the Edward Hotel, as you can see up there. I think the front part is actually just concealed behind trees, so that's probably why I just didn't bother with the rest of this drawing. But built in about 1902 or 3. Unfortunately, like much of the rest of Central, this wonderful old building hasn't operated really as a functioning hotel for about 20 years. It hangs on by a thread, will it ever be properly restored and used? So in my wanderings around Central, I also wandered up the Barkins Valley and did this view back down. And in an earlier post, I showed 4 little houses, little remnants of South End, and you can see the sort of angled roofs of them down the bottom there. So that gives you an indication of where they are in relation to. So that's Warmer on the right, and Central would be on the left. And talking of the Barkins Valley, this is Settlers Park, which was established, I think, around 1900, maybe even a bit later, to commemorate the British settlers. And it established a lovely green lung just upriver from the harbour, the original harbour where the town first developed around 1820. There were a few houses and things before 1820, but it was those British settlers who gave this the impetus for the development of a modern industrial city, the city where the motor industry in South Africa, for instance, was first established, with Ford and General Motors in the 1920s. And part of the delights of walking around Settlers Park back then, when you felt relatively safe, were these fellows. Quite like his cheeky little look. Checking it out. So here we're looking back down the valley again towards the harbour. And on the left, top left, you can see a crane which appears to be sticking out of Fort Frederick, but it's in fact just in the distance on a pier. Then there's a container crane and then more older type of cranes on the right. And the dark section there is a quarry. Quite a nice place to go bird watching. You can get owls in there as well, and other sorts of raptors during the day. In the St. Mary's Cemetery, which was established around the time that Fort Frederick was built in 1799, there are some really historic gravestones. This one, unfortunately, has been weathered so badly that there's virtually nothing left, but I really enjoyed that weathering effect, which is why I treated it like a sort of a life drawing. I mean, object drawing, just the shading and so forth. And then also there's some wonderful old statues like this. Unfortunately, that one's lost a hand. So this cemetery it's filled with giant blue gum trees. They're not indigenous to South Africa, and I think as the branches break off, they can do quite a bit of damage below. So it's unfortunate, but still, it's part of its character, I guess. Now we head inland to Katberg. I think we're going to find there's two drawings that fit together like a jigsaw. Nope, we've got to do it the right way, mate. Yeah, so these two were in a drawing book which I have dismembered, unfortunately, but this was a view across the Katberg range. Classic Eastern Cape landscape, wonderful rolling mountains. And then this was just a quick detail of a section of the range. And another one. There's the lawnmowers. It's good to hear a lawnmower because we often get these weed eaters and they are terribly noisy. The lawnmower sounds quite domestic. I like this mountain. It seems to have a nose. It's like a face with a nose jutting out. A little distant peak there as well. And then I can remember this child carrying sheep. So it's quite in the rural former Ciskei. So a lot of traditional African communities in this area, and this guy was carrying sheep around. I think this was the house. It was like what today would be an Airbnb. But back then, I mean, somehow we managed to book this place and spend a weekend here. Quite a lovely setting. And then this chap, he was just around. I don't remember precisely where, but I got his name, Patrick Makinana 11, Katberg. I didn't put a date, but I would say this was around about 1988 or so. I often wondered what became of this chap. He actually agreed to stand there and let me draw him. It took me about 5 minutes. And now we're back into the book, and this is a guitarist in PE. I think it could be Dave Goldblum. I did a few sketches of him when he played at Cagney's, I think it was called, in Rink Street. Yeah, I think these were done during that concert. I mean, he used to just sort of entertain at this little pub type place. Don't know who this guy was. It's like I'm back in the army here. Somebody tying his shoelaces or something. It's another, looks like Pete Townsend. Don't know how he managed to slip in. He's definitely got Townsend's nose. And he's got the guitar going. So I must have got into a Who concert. Actually, this is probably in Cagney's as well. I haven't seen these drawings for a long time. Up to my old tricks again, eh? Definitely mouse-like, this chap's face. And again, I've used that technique of a bold foreground face and then just a suggested figure behind, which gives it depth. Here we have a vocalist. No idea who this was, but I'm pretty sure it must have been at that Cagney's bar restaurant. Yeah, it's all about the pose, eh? Yikes! What has she seen? Mouth doesn't look too kosher. Sure. This is quite an atmospheric pic as well. It's amazing what I sort of came up with. This was probably a couple watching music. Yeah, so we'll leave it at that for now. Try and, if Patrick picks this up, look, he should be now, this was about 30 years ago, so you should be around 40 years old, 45. Drop us a line, mate. Cheers.